All right,
Yeah.
so we're diving into code this time, which
Yeah.
is really cool. And you've already sent over a bunch of stuff to get us started. Blog posts,
Oh, wow.
forum threads. I think I even saw some Python on a napkin.
Wow, that's dedication.
It is.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, like, what got you started on this whole coding journey? Was it like a
Yeah.
particular project, or were you
Mm-hmm.
like maybe thinking about switching careers, or just fascinated by how software works? What's the deal?
It's always so interesting to see what sparks that initial interest in coding.
Yeah.
Like, there's this perception that it's all super complex,
Right.
algorithms and just
Yeah.
math geniuses.
Yeah.
But often it starts with something so much simpler.
Yeah.
Just that curiosity or wanting to build something cool.
Absolutely. And speaking of cool, one of the sources that you sent,
Uh,
a blog post from Algo Academy,
okay.
uses this analogy about learning to code is like learning to walk. And I know it sounds a little cheesy, but
I like that.
just stick with me on this one.
Yeah, no, I think it's pretty effective.
Yeah.
Especially for this,
Right.
thinking about this deep dive and the stuff that you've sent over. Seems like you're past those first
Right.
few wobbly steps.
Mhm.
You're writing Python code already, so
Totally, yeah.
you're not a total beginner or anything.
Right. And that's where I think the analogy gets even more interesting because they talk about how the beginning can feel really slow and frustrating. It's like a baby kind of fumbling around trying to crawl,
Yeah.
you know? But then there's this moment when you write your first Hello World program
Yes.
and it actually works. And it's like that first unsteady step. You're like, wait, I can do this.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
the feeling, right?
Yeah.
That keeps you going.
Totally. And you even sent in a super simple Hello World written in Python.
Okay, let's see it.
So it might seem really basic,
Mhm.
but it's those few lines of code that you're actually telling the computer what to do, and it's listening.
You're like, I have control.
I know, right? It's so cool.
It is.
And I think it's that feeling of accomplishment, even from something small, that kind of keeps you going.
Totally. It fuels you for the moments when you inevitably stumble.
Yeah.
Because just like learning to walk,
Hmm?
you're going to fall.
Oh, yeah.
Metaphorically speaking, of course.
Right.
And that's where debugging comes in.
Yes. And the blog talks about how Algo Academy's AI assistants can be kind of like a parent's guiding hand, helping you get back up on your feet.
Right.
But you mentioned other resources too, like forum threads, even the Python on the napkin. So have you thought about like tapping into online communities like Stack Overflow or attending like a local Python meetup?
That's a great suggestion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, those can be lifesavers.
They really can.
Yeah.
And, debugging isn't just about fixing the error.
Mhm.
It's really about understanding
Yeah.
how your code works, like stepping through it line by line, figuring out why it's behaving that way.
It's like analyzing your steps, figuring out why you tripped.
Totally.
Yeah.
Like, what did I do wrong?
And adjust your balance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All part of the process.
Totally. And the blog actually lists 3 common types of errors that coders encounter. You've got syntax errors, logic errors, and then runtime errors.
Right. So syntax errors are like tripping over your own feet.
Mm-hmm.
You've made a mistake in the grammar of the code.
Yeah.
Like forgetting a parenthesis or you misspelled a keyword or something. Frustrating, but usually pretty easy to fix once you spot it.
Yeah, like once you realize what you did.
Exactly.
Right.
And then there's logic errors,
Okay.
which those are trickier. Your code might run without any syntax problems,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not doing what you intended it to do.
It's like walking in the wrong direction even though your legs are working fine.
Exactly.
Right.
And then finally, runtime errors.
Yeah.
These happen when your code tries to do something impossible, like divide by 0,
Oh.
and the program just crashes, and you have to figure out what went wrong.
Ouch. Yeah, that one's painful. I've noticed that a lot of beginner coders get really discouraged when they encounter errors.
Yeah.
They kind of see it as a failure,
Mm.
but really it's just like signposts pointing you in the right direction.
I'd argue that embracing those failures and learning from them
Yeah.
is one of the most crucial skills
Absolutely.
you can develop as a coder.
Okay, so we've crawled, we've stumbled, maybe even banged our heads against the wall a few times, but now it's time to start exploring, right? The blog talks about how building simple projects is key to solidifying your understanding and gaining confidence.
It's like that moment when a toddler starts venturing further out from their parents, exploring
Yeah.
their environment, interacting with the world around them.
Totally.
And the project they suggest, a simple guessing game, might seem trivial.
Yeah, Burst. You mean the one where the computer picks a random number and you have to guess it?
It's a classic for a reason.
Yeah.
Because it incorporates several fundamental programming concepts, loops, conditional statements, user input, all packaged into a fun and engaging challenge.
Right.
Now, you mentioned you're already dabbling in Python, so I'm curious, have you tried building anything like this yet?
That's a great question, and I think it highlights the difference between knowing about these coding concepts and actually putting them into practice, like building projects, even simple ones, is where the real learning happens.
Yeah, it's one thing to read about
Yeah.
loops and conditional statements.
Right.
But it's a whole other level of understanding when you're using them to actually create something interactive.
For sure. And the beauty is you can find project ideas everywhere.
Everywhere.
From simple games to automating everyday tasks to building websites, like it's all out there.
The key is to choose projects that are challenging enough to push you.
Yeah.
Outside your comfort zone.
Yeah.
But not so overwhelming that you just get discouraged.
Right. And you don't have to do this alone.
Absolutely not.
No, there are tons of resources, online coding communities, even mentorship programs.
Ancillary resources.
To help you along the way.
Yeah.
Speaking of challenges, the blog mentions algorithms and data structures, which can sound
a little intimidating.
Intimidating, right?
Yeah, they have a bit of a reputation.
Yeah.
But think of algorithms as recipes for solving specific problems.
Okay.
And data structures are ways to organize information efficiently, like learning the most effective way to get from point A to point B, whether you're walking, running, or even flying.
Okay, that makes sense. And, I was looking at the Python code that you scribbled on that napkin.
Oh, let's see that. I'm always curious what people are working on.
It looks like you're trying to implement a sorting algorithm.
Interesting. Sorting algorithms are a great example of how choosing the right approach can significantly impact the efficiency of your code.
The blog actually dives into this with something called big O notation. It sounds complicated.
Yeah, it does.
But it's basically a way to describe how the performance of your code scales with the size of the problem you're tackling.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like comparing walking to driving a car.
Yeah.
Walking might be fine for short distances, but if you need to travel a long way, a car's going to be way faster.
Yeah.
Big O notation helps you analyze how much longer your code's going to take to run as the amount of data you're working with increases.
They give some examples. O1 means constant time, so it always takes the same amount of time, regardless of the input size. Then there's ON, which means linear time, so the time increases proportionally with the input. And then things get a little more complex with ON for quadratic time and O log N for logarithmic time. It's a little mind-bending.
I know it can seem abstract at first, but trust me, understanding big O notation, even at a basic level, is incredibly valuable.
Right.
Especially as you start working on those more complex projects.
So we've talked about crawling, stumbling, exploring, and now we're getting into the realm of running, maybe even trying out some fancy footwork.
I like where you're going with this.
Yeah.
Speaking of fancy footwork, the blog highlights a particularly challenging problem.
Yeah.
The longest palindromic substring problem.
Yes.
It's a real brain teaser. Requires a deep understanding of string manipulation and algorithmic thinking.
A palindrome, by the way, is a word or phrase that reads the same backward as forward, like race car or madam.
Exactly.
And finding the longest palindrome within a longer string of characters.
Yes. It's a great example of how seemingly simple concepts can be combined to create incredibly challenging problems.
And the cool thing is, even if you never encounter this exact problem in the real world,
the problem-solving skills and the ability to break down complex tasks into smaller, more manageable steps are so valuable in any coding endeavor.
So it's like training for a marathon, even if you never plan on running one.
Yeah.
You're building that stamina, endurance, and mental resilience.
Exactly.
But does this mean we've reached the finish line?
No. Of our coding journey analogy. Is this as far as it goes?
Not at all.
Okay.
This is where their analogy takes on a whole new dimension.
All right, I'm ready.
Okay.
Because even when you've mastered walking, you can still learn to run, dance, play sports.
Right.
There's always room for growth.
Absolutely.
And new challenges, right?
Yeah, and the learning never really stops.
Right.
Especially in the world of coding.
Especially in code. Yeah.
The Algo Academy blog talks about this idea of like a lifelong learning mindset.
Yeah.
It's not just about like reaching a certain level of proficiency. It's about constantly expanding your skill set and adapting to new technologies.
So it's like, okay, you've nailed walking. Now how about we try sprinting?
Right.
Or maybe even parkour?
Yeah.
What are some ways that coders can keep pushing themselves and stay current in this ever-evolving landscape?
Well, the blog mentions learning new languages.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a great way to broaden your horizons.
You know, if you're comfortable with Python, maybe you explore JavaScript for web development or C++ for game development.
Right.
Each language has its own strengths and quirks.
Yeah.
And learning new ones can help you think about problems in different ways.
It's like adding new moves to your repertoire.
Yeah.
You might be a great breakdancer, but learning salsa opens up a whole new world of rhythm and expression.
Total.
And speaking of expanding your horizons, the blog also mentions cloud computing. And I'll admit, this one always sounds a little mysterious to me.
Yeah.
What's the cloud all about, and why should coders care about it?
So imagine having access to a vast network of powerful computers all working together to store and process data. That's essentially what the cloud offers. It's like having a team of super strong helpers who can lift heavy weights for you. Allowing you to focus on the more creative aspects of coding.
So instead of like your own computer doing all the heavy lifting, you're tapping into this massive shared resource.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay, and it seems like a lot of companies are moving towards cloud-based solutions these days.
Absolutely. Cloud computing is becoming increasingly important.
Right.
And understanding how to work with cloud platforms like AWS or Azure is a really valuable skill.
Yeah, okay, so we've got new languages, we've got the cloud, and then there's this big one that everyone seems to be talking about, machine learning.
Oh, yeah.
It sounds like something straight out of science fiction.
Right.
What exactly is machine learning, and how does it fit into the coding world?
So machine learning is all about teaching computers to learn from data.
Okay.
It's like giving your computer a brain that can analyze patterns, make predictions, even make decisions.
Wow.
Without being explicitly programmed for every single scenario.
So instead of giving the computer like step-by-step instructions, you're giving it the ability to learn and adapt on its own.
Exactly.
That's pretty mind-blowing.
It is. And it's being used in so many different fields now, from self-driving cars to personalized medicine to fraud detection.
Wow.
It's a rapidly growing area with tons of exciting opportunities for coders.
So it's like you've learned to walk, you've learned to run, and now you're teaching robots how to dance.
That's a good one.
I like that one.
Yeah.
But, you know, with all these new technologies and constantly evolving trends, it's easy to feel overwhelmed. How can coders stay motivated and avoid feeling lost in this, like, vast sea of information?
That's a great question, and it brings us back to that idea of a growth mindset that the Algo Academy blog emphasized.
Yeah.
It's about embracing challenges, focusing on the process of learning rather than just the end goal, and seeing those setbacks as opportunities for growth.
So it's not just about learning the technical skills, it's about cultivating a certain attitude.
It is.
It's like even if you trip and fall, you get back up, dust yourself off, and you're like, okay, what can I learn from that?
Exactly. And it's important to remember that everyone learns at their own pace.
Right.
There's no need to compare yourself to others or feel pressured to keep up with every single new trend.
Right.
Just focus on your own goals and what you're passionate about.
Totally. And speaking of passion, the blog also mentions the importance of contributing to open source projects.
Oh, yeah.
Can you explain what that means and why it's beneficial for coders?
Sure. So open source projects are essentially software projects where the code is publicly available.
Okay.
Anyone can contribute to its development.
Okay.
It's a fantastic way to learn from experienced developers, build real-world experience, and give back to the coding community.
It's like joining a team of experienced hikers who are willing to share their knowledge and help you navigate those trails.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
You can find open source projects for almost anything.
Yeah.
From web frameworks to machine learning libraries to video games.
Wow.
It's a great way to dive into something you're interested in and make meaningful contributions.
Okay, and the last thing the blog mentions is attending tech conferences and meetups.
Yeah, those are great.
What's the value in those like in-person connections?
Conferences and meetups are fantastic opportunities to network with other coders, learn about the latest trends, get inspired by what other people are working on.
Right.
It's like attending a festival for all things code.
I love that.
Where you can soak up knowledge, share your own experiences, and make valuable connections.
So it's like you've been training on your own.
Right.
Now it's time to join a team, share ideas, and see what other amazing things that people are doing.
Exactly. It's about becoming part of that vibrant and supportive community where you can learn from each other, collaborate on projects, and push the boundaries of what's possible with code.
It all sounds incredibly exciting.
Yeah.
But also a bit daunting, especially for someone just starting out.
For sure.
How do you even begin to navigate all these different paths and possibilities?
I think the key is to start with what you're passionate about.
Okay.
What problems do you want to solve? What kind of impact do you want to make? Once you have a sense of direction, you can start exploring the resources and communities that align with your goals.
It's like you don't have to learn every dance move out there, just the ones that resonate with you and help you express yourself creatively.
Totally. And remember, it's a journey, not a race.
Yeah.
Take your time, experiment, explore, and don't be afraid to ask for help along the way.
And speaking of your journey, I'm curious, what are some of the specific challenges or questions that you've encountered as you've been exploring these different aspects of coding?
Well, for me, one of the biggest challenges has been staying focused amidst all the distractions.
Totally.
It's so easy to get caught up in the latest shiny new technology or framework and lose sight of what you're actually trying to achieve.
It's like being in a candy store with endless options.
Right.
But you only have so much room in your stomach.
Exactly. So I've learned the importance of setting clear goals.
Yeah.
Prioritizing what I want to learn and blocking out time for focused work.
That's great advice. And it seems like you're already doing a good job of prioritizing and focusing based on the materials you sent in.
Okay.
You've got a mix of theoretical concepts from the Algo Academy blog, practical examples from those forum threads.
Yeah.
Even your own code scribbled on a napkin. It shows a real dedication to learning and experimenting.
I appreciate that. And speaking of experimenting, I've been really fascinated by the potential of machine learning. But it's also been the most intimidating area for me to dive into.
Right.
The math can get pretty intense.
Oh, yeah, I hear you on that one. But remember, you don't have to become a math whiz overnight.
Right.
There are tons of resources available that break down those complex concepts in a more accessible way.
I've found that starting with practical projects, even simple ones, is a great way to build confidence and get a feel for how machine learning works.
It's like you don't have to understand every detail of how a car engine works to be able to drive it.
Right.
You can start by learning the basics, get comfortable behind the wheel, and then gradually delve deeper into those mechanics as you go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great analogy for learning to code in general.
Yeah.
So taking that first step, embracing the journey, and enjoying the ride.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
From the fundamental concepts of coding to the vast and ever-expanding landscape of new technologies and opportunities.
It is vast.
What are some of the key takeaways that you hope our listener will walk away with?
Well, first and foremost, I hope they'll embrace the idea that learning to code is an ongoing journey.
Yeah.
Full of challenges and rewards. It's not about reaching a certain destination. It's about constantly expanding your skill set and pushing your boundaries.
It's like you've learned to walk. Now it's time to see where those feet can take you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I hope they'll also remember that they don't have to do this alone.
Yeah.
There's a vast and supportive community of coders out there,
right,
both online and in person, who are eager to help and share their knowledge.
And with all these resources and opportunities available, it's easier than ever to get started.
It is.
But before we wrap up this deep dive, I'm curious, do you have any parting advice for our listeners specifically based on their journey and the materials they provided?
You know, I was particularly intrigued by that Python code on the napkin.
Oh, yeah.
It suggests a real hands-on approach to learning, and I think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
My advice would be to keep experimenting, keep building, and don't be afraid to break things along the way.
That's such great advice, because sometimes the best way to learn is to just dive in.
Totally.
And get your hands dirty.
And remember, every expert coder was once a beginner.
Right.
Fumbling their way through the basics. The key is to embrace the journey and never stop learning.
And this deep dive was just the first step on your exciting coding adventure. So it really is an adventure. And we talked about how learning to code is like learning to walk. But we left you with a question.
Yeah.
What's the running a marathon equivalent in the coding world?
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Because a marathon isn't just about putting one foot in front of the other.
Right.
It's about endurance, strategy, and really pushing your limits.
So what are some of those like marathon moments in the coding world? What are those challenges that really test a coder's skills and dedication?
Well, it could be mastering a highly specialized field like artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, or blockchain development. These are areas that require deep knowledge and constant learning to stay ahead of the curve.
It's like choosing to specialize in ultra marathons or obstacle course races.
Absolutely.
You're really pushing yourself.
You are.
Both physically and mentally.
Yeah, and for others, the marathon might be building a complex software application from the ground up.
Right.
Something that solves a real-world problem they're passionate about.
Yeah.
Like developing a new medical imaging tool or creating an educational platform for underserved communities.
That's where the collaborative aspect of coding comes in, right?
Yeah.
It's like having a team of runners.
Yes.
Supporting each other, sharing the load, and pushing each other to reach that finish line.
Absolutely. And then there are those who might consider their marathon to be becoming a leader in the open source community.
Right.
Contributing to projects that benefit countless people around the world, mentoring new developers, shaping the future of software development.
That's a different kind of endurance.
It is.
It's about sustained contribution, collaboration, and a commitment to making a positive impact.
I like that.
Yeah. And you know what's really exciting is that the tools and resources for running these coding marathons are more accessible than ever before. Platforms like Algo Academy are breaking down barriers.
Absolutely.
And empowering anyone with the drive and curiosity to dive in and push their limits.
It's true.
Yeah.
And it all starts with that first step. Even if you're not sure what kind of marathon you want to run, just start walking, exploring, see where the path takes you.
The coding world is full of possibilities.
It is.
And whether you're building a simple website or tackling a complex machine learning algorithm, the most important thing is to embrace the journey and never stop learning.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, this deep dive has given us a lot to think about.
It really has.
But as we wrap up, I want to emphasize one last point.
Okay.
Every expert was once a beginner.
That's right.
Just like you.
Yeah.
They all started somewhere, faced challenges, and learned through experience.
It's true.
So if you're feeling inspired to take that first step on your coding journey,
do it.
Don't hesitate. Embrace the challenge, find your community, and enjoy the adventure.
I love it.
That's it for this deep dive. Happy coding!